good morning all. Welcome to our Climate and Environment Committee for the 8th of April 2025. Thank you for your presence today, both council staff, councillors, elected members and those people who are members of this committee, as well as Councillor Halliday, who has come along because of his interest, no doubt. And it is a very, very interesting agenda today. So I would now like to ask Councillor Hanford to read the council blessing, please.
Morena. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana i ngā take kei mua i o mātou aroaro. I pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara huapai mō ngā hāpore e mahina i mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tā mātou mahi, a mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hihiri, ka taia te arahi i roto i te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanford. So now we'll move on to item 3, which is apology. So I have an apology from Councillor Liz Coe, and via Zoom we have, just for notification, we have Councillor Cooper, and we have other people who are also online. I think Mike Moore might be jumping. Oh yes, he is there. Simon Black and Tim Tahiwi. So could we please have a mover for the, I'll move the apology for Councillor Coe. Councillor Hanford seconding that. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Simon Black, yeah, he's there as well. Sorry, I didn't mention you, Simon. So there's, yep, that's it. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 4, which is declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. I haven't been notified of any, but would anyone like to state that now if they have any conflicts of interest? Thank you. So now we'll move on to item 5, which is public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. I haven't been notified of any, so there are no public speaking today. So item 6, deputations, there aren't any on the agenda. So item 7, leaves of absence. If anyone have any leaves of absence, please contact the Mayor's office. I also haven't been notified of any matters of an urgent nature, so that will lay on the table as well. So now we move on to item 8. That was very, very quick, but I think the rest of the very, very interesting agenda today may well take up all our allocated time. So now I will ask Robbie Still to come forward to speak on the waste management and minimisation plan implementation update. Welcome, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kirby. If we go to page 6 on our agenda, we will see the paper before us, and at this point in time note that our recommendations are to note that this update has been provided. So thank you Robbie and team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today we've got various updates from the last few months under the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. First update, so last month a new waste strategy was released by Central Government, by Ministry for the Environment. So this replaces the previous strategy, which was put through in March 2023. The previous strategy was the one that signalled that councils must take on a curbside collection contract. It introduced performance standards. It mandated the provision of curbside food scraps. So all of those policies have been cancelled and replaced with this current strategy. The strategy keeps the door open for a container return scheme and a review of the Waste Minimisation Act. So it's sort of the two key pieces of this new strategy. The regional steering group and the joint committee developed a letter advocating on two waste issues. So that has been through all the councils of the Wellington region and signed by most of the mayors. So that was on two issues: the container return scheme. So that's the 20-cent deposit on a can or a bottle. It was cancelled just before the last elections, but all of the work's still there. The policies are there. So all of the councils have got together and sort of said this is probably the one most impactful waste policy. Can we have some action on it? The second part of the letter was proposed changes to the Waste Minimisation Act, just requesting that MFE consults with local government before any further changes are made. So as far as I'm aware, that letter's been signed and sent off by the mayors of the region. On the regional projects, so there's three major project updates that were at the last joint committee. So investigate and deliver solutions to address the processing and beneficial use of the region's construction and demolition waste. So Otahonga Zero Waste plays into this. Porirua City Council have a project on the way, and Hutt City is bringing in new initiatives at the Silverstream landfill. There's no easy wins or sort of clear pathways to this large-scale C&D waste, so we're still behind the scenes trying to figure out what those large-scale pathways are. But in the meantime, there's been three really good sites, a bit of progress. The WMP signalled an expansion of the Wellington region's resource recovery network, with the target being 5 new sites implemented by 2030. So we've already got 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it. So Otahonga Zero Waste was one, Tiaro Zero Waste in Wellington was the second, and various updates to Silverstream's transfer stations and a zero waste hub with waste management is in the works as well. So that target's going really well. So that's almost 3 out of the 5 by 2030 underway. The third project was to strengthen the Wellington Region Waste Forum. So Kapiti hosted the first forum under this revamped format. The second was at the Wairarapa. Since then, the steering groups revised the frequency of these events down from 4 to 2 events to allow for bigger events, more resourced, better planning. If anyone's interested in these events, we can register you on the Waste Forum mailing list. The next one will be hosted at Hutt City later on this year. So to Kapiti and what we're doing here under the local action plan. So the recent waste levy grants closed at the end of last year. So we had, again, oversubscribed in the community fund. So we allocated $30,000 to 10 applicants. Business waste was undersubscribed again. So 8,750 allocated to 4 businesses. We've started planning for the next round, which will be brought forward a bit for the elections. So it should open in late May this year. We're following up with the previous recipients to see how their projects are going. We're also reviewing and updating the allocation policy. So Waste has 2 items on the policy work program. So the first, the waste levy grant allocation policy. We've proposed some minor changes. These are all just ideas for now, so this will come back to council for further feedback. But what we were thinking, increasing the maximum cap a little bit due to the increased waste levy allocation. We're looking at whether we can open up a small grants category, so that will be open year round, up to $2,000, similar to how Wellington City Council does this. So that kind of removes the really kind of cumbersome, long process with only once a year. If it's something small like a school group wants a worm farm, we kind of want to make that a bit easier for people. Obviously, there's questions around accountability and who approves that. We've updated and strengthened the accountability reporting and funding agreements. So there's a set template now. It was always included. It's more just of a light update, really. And updated priorities. There's no major changes, but just to, I think probably, circular economy development and infrastructure has become the number 1. Organic waste and C&D waste has always been the top 2 or 3 priorities. And then just updating the last two there. So this will come to council for further feedback, but the current policy is still relevant, still works, but just to keep things current and relevant, and ideally make some more funding available. The second item, so a minor amendment to the solid waste bylaw. I've talked about this briefly. We've built a bit of momentum with it. It should be, in theory, implemented this year. So under the bylaw, we can make a control that any building consent application or resource consent application above a certain amount has to provide a waste minimisation plan. So how will they manage and minimise waste during the construction of a above $2 million project? So $2 million is the threshold at other councils around the region. So we need to set that threshold. Our starting point would be the same as the other councils. It contributes to our council priorities. It's in various stages of being implemented around the region, but with the Zero Waste Hub, that would sort of be our platform to make this happen. So we're prioritising this work. At some point soon, this will come back to council as well, and ideally we set probably a $2 million threshold waste minimisation plan submitted to us. We review, and ideally that sort of funnels timber through the Zero Waste Hub. Love Your Compost program's back. It's had a bit of a reshuffle. It's now being delivered on behalf of us through community partners, so Organic Wealth and a couple of other community members. We had our first one last week at the Zero Waste Hub. So we set up outdoors, had it delivered. There's a community composting corner that's been set up at the Zero Waste Hub, so it's got a little example of every different system. So they've made an old bath into a worm farm. There's bokashi bins, all sorts of composting systems. So when we have these workshops at the Zero Waste Hub, we can take people over and show them basically every system. So there's further dates set that I think went out in Everything Kapiti last week or the week before. So this has been taken away from being delivered by my team, whereas now my team makes sure it's being delivered through the community. So we're paying a local business to deliver these on our behalf, which has really ramped up how much we can deliver as well. It's working really good already. So we recently supported the new Love Food Hate Waste campaign, the Food Critics. Staff would have seen posters up around the buildings. Love Food Hate Waste provide all of these sort of posters, key messages. This one was focused on meal planning to reduce your waste, so it came with meal planning books, that sort of thing. I think there's ads on TV as well. We had, so on the back of that, we hosted a Food Waste Action Week for staff. This is Richard Scouten. He's our new Wasteman advisor. So he's brought lots of experience from Upper Hutt Council and had a lot of fun doing this. So he ran 2 competitions for staff. One was, so that's a smoothie bike. So you've got a pedal to make a smoothie. So we got some rescued food, some bananas, that sort of thing, and got staff on the bike to make themselves a smoothie. And he also did a recipe swap. So how do you use up your leftovers? We continue to implement the bylaw. So this was me and Richard and the cadets at Movies in the Park. So me and Richard showed up and actually didn't have much to do, which is amazing. These cadets are great. You know, they're at most of the events in the district, really enthusiastic. So they do manage the bins, do the audits at the end of the day. So they made our job really easy, which is just awesome to see that in action. The event was really well organised by Organic Wealth was contracted to manage the event as well. So we really just got to go down and watch everything be taken care of. It was really cool to see. Building on that, last year we had a workshop on waste minimisation at events. We're bringing that series back this year. We've decided to change it up a bit. So we'll do one workshop around September, which will incorporate everything from start to finish. So submitting a waste plan prior to the event, managing the bins on the day, and then the post-event waste audit. So it'll be more of a practical exercise. Still ironing out details, but we might host the rest of the region as well, so make that kind of a big event that the other council waste teams can get involved with. The Zero Waste Hub, so since this was 70 tonnes they celebrated in January. Since then, it's close to 100. Ben was quite excited about potentially hitting 100 tonnes, I think, this week. 57 tonnes of that 95 tonnes was timber. They've been working with 15 local and regional businesses on commercial waste reduction, so that's builders, plumbers, everyone. They've got good relationships with the 4 major waste companies in Kapiti. They're currently employing 3.2 FTE with planned increases. One employee was recently hired with the MSD Flexi Wage program. I'm not sure if it's the same person, but he was hired through, so started with Volunteer Kapiti. He was the first one on site through that program, and then they managed to get him some paid hours out of that too. They're now accepting plastic and metal lids. They just hit 100 kgs of plastic lids recycled after a few weeks. Tetra Paks, electronics. Household polystyrene is the big one that was announced Friday last week. So there's not many places that take household polystyrene. So that's now live. Phase 2 is underway, which is looking at a new building on site for the Zero Waste Hub. We've got a briefing on that next week, so I won't get into the details now. So that's a real quick crash course in everything that's been happening for the last few months. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Robbie. Do we have any questions? Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Great work, Robbie. Fantastic things going on with the team. Just a question I had was around the, we've removed the what was going to be a pathway for curbside collection for organics. As such, just wondering what our approach is going to be, or what you think our approach is going to be as we move forward, sort of addressing that aspect.
Yeah, it would still be licensing. So, I've talked to the collectors. If they had a approved site, approved methodology, then we would amend the license to allow for that. There's been other setbacks in the bigger picture of food scrap collection with Wanganui's not going ahead.
Right.
In theory, that could have led to additional sites operational. There's a few changes, few setbacks. At this stage, it's kind of wait and see. We're really encouraging that with the mandate being cancelled for us here, it keeps the smaller people in the picture, so we're still working with those local community composters. I think we've got 4 small-scale food scrap collections from people like Organic Wealth to
EcoBuddy. There's a new one called Worm It Up.
Oh yeah.
And PieCycle.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, PieCycle have done basically the majority of Paikakariki's food scraps for a long time now. So people like that weren't necessarily included under the mandate. So for us, it's good to give them that certainty as well.
No, it's great to know. And as part of the issue, just capacity of where that stuff can go, is it?
Yeah, so there's no operational sites in the Lower North Island for curbside food scraps.
Right, okay.
The closest one.
Clarifies that one. Yep, and the other thing I just want to clarify, the waste levy allocations, that's out of the what am I thinking of? The rate from the rubbish. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, the waste levy. So
Levy, that's the one, the waste levy, sorry. So that's, the grants and everything is funded by that waste levy, is that right? It's not actually a rates generated income as such, it's a levy.
Yeah, so the levy is at $60 a tonne at the moment. It started off at 10 a few years ago. So our apportionment increases alongside that.
Yep.
This government's also scheduled 3 further increases of $5. So it'll reach $75 a tonne in about 3 years. Still low by international standards, but a massive improvement for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just want to get that clarified, that's that those grants are coming out of that levy rather than rates as such, which you've done. Thank you very much. Fantastic work.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. And I also, at this point, I'd like to acknowledge the work that you've done as our representative in the Wellington Regional Forum for this topic. Thank you. So now we'll go to Simon Black, who's online.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou all. And thank you, Robbie, for that presentation. Excellent, excellent work. Couple of questions for me. The per household, the levies you're talking about, is that per house, or is that how do subdivisions taken into the charge? You know, the $1 or the $2 million threshold there. Is that the whole build, or is that just a single house?
Yes, it would be the whole application. So if you apply for a subdivision build consent, then that will almost definitely trigger it. So it could be a subdivision, it could be a single building. I guess it is just, there's an estimated value of a single application that you register, I believe. So anything. So you're right. It could be one big house, or it could be a whole subdivision.
Great. No, thank you for that. Also, the Love Food Tape Waste, is that commercial data, or is that there just residential data you've got there? All that 3.2 billion waste.
Yeah, I believe that was New Zealand wide, so that would cover commercial and residential. I'm not exactly sure how they got those numbers. That is through Wasteman, so they do a lot of research for the waste industry. I'm happy to share that the full campaign as well. There's some good research behind it.
That'd be excellent, thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, what is for Kapiti alone, you know, do we know our commercial versus residential numbers of waste? And are we targeting the right places or people?
Yes, there's a thing called a SWAPS, a solid waste analysis, where we go through and measure all the waste at a transfer station and at curbside. So we're due for another one of those. It's been a little while, this calendar year. So we'll assess what the composition is at curbside, what the composition is at a transfer station. It is quite hard to split between commercial and residential, but it does give us some good numbers, and we do have really solid waste data for the district. But again, that is consolidated. There's no obvious split between commercial and residential.
Understood. And my final question is bins. Is your remit around collection bins at, say, car parks and parking spaces or reserve areas and stuff? Because I'm kind of like been writing in at the moment, seeing that there's a lack of refuge bins in the south part of the Tasman Street car park at Otaki Beach. And I got a response that they're kind of like doubling up on some bins, not going to replace others. But I can see that you know, there's a lot of waste down one side of the car park and not the other. And I was just wondering if this is part of the overall plan to see whether refuse bins are being used and cleaned frequently enough.
Yeah, so that's managed by Ops. We're sort of on the peripheries of managing that. I guess the main thing is cost. It is expensive. You see, Auckland Council moved away from having more public bins, but if it is a hotspot like that on the beach, where it's sort of maybe if it's even moving a bin to a better place, the thing is as soon as you put a bin out, it attracts more waste. People do drive to it. People do dump rubbish around it. We do have KPIs around clearing that illegally dumped rubbish, and we do respond to service requests about full bins, but it's a hard one. I mean, you put more bins out, people will fill it quicker, and it is really expensive. But in terms of hotspots like that, we can look into it.
That's great. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions for me. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you, Mr. Black. I was going to continue with the questions, but I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Black's very first question in relation to this $2 million cap. So, what have you done any calculations as to what percentage of builds that will cover?
No, that data isn't captured. And I think when that $2 million number was first put out, which was early 2020, it probably sounded quite big too, whereas now it will potentially capture the majority of building consents. So that's all part of what we need to consider and update.
Yeah, because I was because like I am sort of looking at the big picture here in terms of, if you're going to build a home or even a development, you're going to have to get rid of the construction waste anyway. And so to me, I'm interested to hear what would be wrong with the logic of actually reducing that minimum, that level to a lower level.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, it would be every single building consent for us. It just comes down to resource. So I guess you've got to start somewhere, and then we will have that data. How many consents is it manageable? What would it take to scale that up?
So you talk about resourcing. Is that so? Where is the tight point there?
It's a good. So there's lots of questions around implementation. Whether it's the building consent team themselves, probably long term it would be a regulatory capacity like that. But again, it's a new function. To start with, it probably would sit within the waste team, but then we've also got opportunities to work with external partners. Whether the Zero Waste Hub was our main resource for processing applications like this. It's hard because it hasn't been consistently implemented around the region either. Otherwise, we'd just kind of look at what Wellington's doing and base it off that. So it's a hard one. We kind of just need to.
Yeah, well, because I suppose it's either going to go to the tip or it's going to go elsewhere. And I suppose, I don't know whether you've talked to the owners there, because obviously you can see where it's come from. And so that there potentially is a way of disincentivising people to actually send it there when they potentially are going to get asked some questions.
Yeah, that's yes. I mean, there's working with. There's probably three parts. There's working with the willing. There are a lot of people and big businesses that want to do this. There's the regulatory mandating approach, which is probably the final stage, and then there's the main goal of the site is to have a cheaper, easier option than landfill. So the landfill price is going up. If you can pop next door, drop something off for a fraction of the price, and it hasn't taken you longer, is probably the key part of that. Then people are starting to do that. It's probably the resistant ones, the ones that big companies that pass on the cost of everything that goes to tip, just within buried within a contract. So working with the willing is going really good. There's a few champions, a few big companies that are doing this stuff. Yeah.
So well, hopefully, I suppose it's about changing people's behaviours as well, and so you either use a stick or a carrot, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I suppose the other issue too is that the hub. The question is whether or not it can absorb extra materials as well, and then I suppose long term, or actually further down the track, literally down the track, is this material actually being used, or is it actually going somewhere out of sight, out of mind type stuff?
Yeah, so there is no, we're focusing on reuse at the moment, which is relatively small scale compared to the scale of the problem. I mean, some surveys have showed that 50% of waste going to landfill is from construction, and you can see it yourself if you spend a day at the transfer station. Sorry, I forgot where I was going with that.
It's about the capacity of
Capacity.
and
yeah.
where it goes, how it's reutilised long term.
Yeah, so we do need a larger scale option for everything that isn't reused. In Auckland, they send to a cement factory, so they've replaced using coal and instead incinerate certain types of timber. So we don't have anything like that. But there is research going on through various councils. We've got a research project happening here at the moment. So ideally, we do have that large scale, rather than it's good to say reuse, but in reality, it is a fraction of the problem.
Thank you. So my last question on this topic is, I know we've talked about our policy work, but when is this likely to come in?
We probably don't have.
There's a small chance, or there's a reasonable chance it may occur before the local government elections,
Okay.
but not at that stage locked in yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to Mr. Olsen. Questions?
Yeah, thank you. On the curbside collections, I know this has been discussed previously, but nothing's really got anywhere. So my drive-in today showed me that there's still a real problem with like in days like today with recycling and stuff coming over, because the amount of recycling bins and stuff and rubbish bins that were down on my drive here, it's not a very big drive, was just amazing. And what happens to this stuff, how does it get collected, where does it go? But that's not my question. So I know what's been discussed previously is in other areas, there's a mandate for clips, but instead of doing a mandate in Kapiti for clips, I'm wondering if we could look at a scheme where we just sell clips to, the public that want them, maybe through the zero waste or here like we do with the bins, and then at least, I imagine there'll be quite a big uptake of our public taking these if we did offer them, just like, the water bins that we do here, or the water, tanks that we do here.
Yeah, it's really good timing for your question because we've just done this. So any bins from 2020 onwards are mandated to come with a clip, but obviously any other bins don't have a clip. So we've made them free for residents to pick up from here.
Okay.
We bought 100 and they went basically immediately. We didn't know if people would actually be interested or not. So residents can pop in just here to reception here. Just register the address, so just one per household. And they can get a bin
Is that
clip.
one clip, or because there's two with recycling and rubbish?
Yeah, just for recycling.
Just for recycling.
Waste, you would assume, is heavy enough to not get blown around. That's why it's only ever
Yeah.
been.
Not on the drive
Today's
I had
probably
this
proved that
morning.
wrong.
On days like today where it's really bad, there is a problem, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
something. So we've funded it under the under curbside recycling in our local action plan for recycling. For waste bins, it gets a little trickier, unfortunately, but that's something we can work on with the
Has that
collectors.
been publicised? Like,
It went out maybe just in everything Kapiti, so we'll do further comms on that. Today's probably a good day to do it.
okay, yeah, indeed, yeah. Okay, perfect. No, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. I think it's a great
Yeah,
initiative.
good question, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, very, very good question. So now we'll go to Mr. Moore online.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Robbie. First, I want to acknowledge the polystyrene collection. Now, that's been asked for and talked about across the district for a long time. So that's really good news. Everybody finds it difficult how to get rid of that. So thanks for bringing that aboard. I might do some local comms around our community as well. The question I've got, it might be a bit left field, but it's going on a bit from what's just been raised by Simon Black about collection of bins that is separate. I've just been down in Otatahu, Christchurch for the last few days, and there's recycling bins in public spaces alongside general waste. Is there any desire? I know there's a big cost factor to separate that out. Extra collection, as you just mentioned, attracts people dumping more stuff. But is there any desire or thought process in the longer term to have some of those separate bins in public areas?
Yeah, that's there was a little era of rolling out public recycling around New Zealand, and the majority of them have been pulled by now. It was a bit of a disaster. It was really expensive. It was heavily contaminated. It attracted a lot of. I mean, we had ones here that were overflowing with glass near a playground, and people were just smashing bottles on the ground. It really wasn't worth the cost. Maybe some places have made it work and certain circumstances, but overall it's New Zealand isn't great with recycling. Recycling in public is even worse.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. So we'll move on now to Councillor Warwick. Thank you.
My question is around the Zero Waste Hub, and I know they've been really busy, but how are they working with the schools to get the kids excited about doing, collecting bottle tops and doing worm farms and all that kind of stuff? Are they, or are you working with schools?
Yeah, so they're not specifically yet. We've still got the Zero Waste Education Program. So that's delivered by external educator Chris Simmons. So schools can register for lessons and he'll include that in it. But you're right, that's sort of a bigger push. Schools can fundraise a bit of money through Tetra Pak collection, not the bottle caps, but any way that we can, get schools on board. It's been a little bit hard. We're trying to resource it a bit more. The educator's really good, but he's spread between a few districts as well.
Yeah.
So that is something that we really want to look at. And maybe the Zero Waste Hub could focus on that as well at some point.
And the other thing is with the $2 million, needing to put their waste in or divert their waste. So does the information about how and where to divert building waste go out with all consents? Like, that would be good if it did.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that isn't a thing at the moment is there's been a massive lack of options. It's kind of the chicken and the egg. Do
Yeah.
you mandate it and have these big companies actually figure out how to do it? Or do we mandate it and kind of say there's pretty limited options? But the options are getting much better. That's why all the councils are looking at pushing this through. I know Tauranga has a really good handbook that goes to anyone looking to minimise waste. So that is something we've talked about, whether we do it regionally or locally. It probably is a regional action at this stage, but you're right, updated materials acceptance and where you can take timber is something we really need to do.
Because maybe a bit of a media campaign around the people who are doing well, because consumers at the end of the day choose who they want to build, and if they've got a good reputation for diverting waste, it might actually be good business sense to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
If we promote them.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, working with the willing, we
Yeah.
are getting some really good champions.
Are we telling the story though about the champions? How can we tell the story?
I can just offer a perspective from last year's Waste Levy grants. Developer company consultant called Land Matters applied for some funding for doing a waste audit.
Yep.
And they recognise the value in, exactly like you say, Councillor Warwick, for kind of promoting the credentials of trying to do right by the region. They included in their application at their own cost to be promoting it in local news media. So, yeah, I think Robbie's point about working with the willing is completely valid here.
But selling that story might also make more people willing, or telling that story.
Yeah, we'll definitely do some case studies. We've been told just recently that our case studies are quite useful, but it's updating that with a construction focus. There's a few regional platforms as well, so the construction waste, what's it called?
Build cluster.
The build cluster. Yes, there really is a lot of momentum growing in this space, and you're right. We do need to share that story.
And then lastly, can the clips for the bins be given out at Otaki Library as well? Eventually, when you get more.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. I think that was the plan, so we'll look into that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warwick. So I have a further, sort of a question, a comment in relation to the food waste side of things. So one component of eating are takeaways. And I suppose with that, there are containers that our takeaway foods come in. And I know that there are some businesses who do provide containers that can be composted. Has that, I suppose, talking to the other businesses, which there's obviously big businesses and smaller ones, national, international chains, talking to them about how they can be more environmentally friendly in terms of providing their packaging. And I suppose this then extends into, it's a big topic here, but I'm just talking specifically about the food aspect at this point in time.
Yeah, with those updates on the national waste strategy, they also cancelled the banning of polystyrene takeaway food containers. So to be honest, there's been a bit of regression in the space. On the compostable stuff, I mean, there was so many different products brought out at the same time. It just became a lot of greenwashing. There are genuinely compostable products. Businesses haven't really tended so far to look at the whole picture. How do you actually compost them at the end? Like that's the main question to ask. If someone says their packaging is compostable, then actually, what do I do with it? Is it commercial? Can I put it in my worm farm? There's guidelines that have been updated, packaging guidelines, that sort of thing. We're looking at it for events as well to make sure that whatever packaging there that's being composted is okay. But it's so many products and it's incredibly unclear.
Thank you, because I suppose ultimately it's actually the end user who's got to dispose of it.
Exactly.
And so I don't know whether people make decisions about where their takeaways come from based on the packaging or not. Some may do, but the vast majority would not.
Yeah, it's worth asking if they'll let you use your own container. Most places are pretty
Yes,
receptive to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of Coastlands Food Court knows that staff, a lot of staff bring reusable bowls with them now, so there's been no issues with that as well.
Thank you. So we'll move on to Councillor Halliday again.
Yeah, look, I actually didn't have a question. I just wanted to add to the conversation. One of the things I've certainly noticed the last sort of year and a half, 2 years being involved is actually the development and how things are moving forward in this space. And I think what's just been highlighted there is there's lots of moving parts here, but we're actually gaining traction in a lot of them. One of the things I see moving forward is that we've got the economic development team working with businesses around sustainability. We've got ED also, we've got the development of business associations, so there's potentially pathways to link in with local businesses, and I think these are all pathways that we can develop the conversations that you're talking about, Jocelyn, with regards to how do we get the community working forward. It seems to me there's a lot of things starting to come together, which I am really liking the direction that things are heading in this space, but it'd be good to be ensuring that the other departments or other parts of council start pulling together with regards to some of the stuff as well. Even in the Kapiti Health Advisory Group, we have one of the groups here looking at nutrition for kids in schools. In other words, bringing pathways into schools, and this can all be linked together. We saw a fantastic presentation down in Newlands from the Garden to the Table, which is an educational program with regards to changing mentalities with kids, and that's also looking at educating families with regards to how to cook, etc., etc. And this can be all part of that ecosystem that's coming together as such. The biggest challenge we've got, especially in the ED space, in the CD space or commercial demolition, is just having the facility in the district, and part of the regional plan is different parts of the region are doing different things. We've actually done our bit with regards to Zero Waste Hub, but Lower Hutt, say for argument's sake, is looking at developing a Wellington-centric C&D waste space. Not saying that we can't develop ours, and we're already doing that with the Zero Waste Hub, and that's already expanded, taking polystyrene, taking tyres. Some really, really good wins there for the district. It's how do we then scale that up as that demand kicks in as well. Really, really happy to hear about the bin clips. As such, didn't realise that, so I'll certainly be getting that messaging out as well. But yeah, just as a general comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. As there are no more questions or comments, we'll now move to page 6, where we have our recommendation, which is to note this update provided. Can I have a mover for that, please? Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Warwick, yeah, Christian, yeah. Thank you. All those in favour? Pass, thank you. So thank you very much for Robbie and Dave for coming along, presenting this today, and also the work that you guys are doing in behind all this. And I think, as Councillor Halliday said, this is actually one small component of looking at our living environment, in terms of climate change as well as our environment. And they're all, really closely linked. And I think it's about doing what we can, but also remembering how these other linkages actually play together. So thank you very much again, and thank you also to Councillor Halliday for his work that he does in our regional forum on this topic. So thank you very much. So now we'll move on to item 8.3, which is our transport pathway network plan. So I will invite Fraser to come up. I'm not sure whether Dave is going to come up again or whether he's, no. So Philippa and Sean are coming. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Okay, so Fraser, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and everyone being here to listen to this Pathway Network Plan report and update. Just run through a quick agenda for today's presentation. I will effectively speak to the report and highlight some key points and provide some additional information. We should have plenty of time towards the end to discuss the plan and get feedback. So running through the agenda, we'll do some quick introductions, run through the purpose of today's update, some background information, and I'll run through some key points in the plan. At the moment, Philip is handing around the brochure and program, which is effectively the core part of the plan that everyone will be keen to have a look at. Then we'll run through some challenges, next steps, and get into the discussion before we look back to the recommendation. So my name is Fraser Miller. I'm Transport's team lead for walking and cycling and lead for this plan update. I've got Philippa here to my left. She is our comms lead, has been involved in the project from its conception, and down the end, we've got Mark Martin, who will also be available and joining us in the discussion later on. He's our team leader for asset management. And Sean Mallon is the project sponsor. I'll just quickly hand over to Sean. He's just going to give a quick intro and, I guess, background and context of the plan.
Morning, everybody. So this is not, so obviously I think we came back to this committee last year at some point, didn't we, initially? We've had a workshop as well with council in terms of feeding into this process. So it's linked to the requirement that we have with NZTA from a funding perspective to have a network plan to support our applications for subsidised work. So, but it's also part of a wider program of work associated with having a network strategy so that we can then, as and when developments come along, or as and when we have an upgrade or another element to our network that we're looking at improving, we can link it to our network plan. Probably the development side of it is one area where we've had feedback over the years that, you know, making sure that if there is a subdivision or a bigger development that's happening, we can make sure that we have a surrounding sort of network plan that we can then use to leverage from those developers to provide for those connections. So the plan itself, you'll see I think there's a list of 20 projects in terms of high priority that we're presenting today, but there's a wider list that was provided through this process, which is in the main document, that enables us to use that then to, like I said, link it to developments as and when they occur, so that council potentially wouldn't be funding all of this. If we can use that development opportunity to leverage funding, then that's exactly what we do. It also enables us to link to the open space, tracks and trails strategy work and the trust there. So again, we have had over the years bits of land that become available or projects that become live through some development or whatever, where just having those other pieces of the network available so that you can show there's a strategic link or a strategic benefit to plugging in those gaps. This document allows us to do that, and without it, we wouldn't be able to obtain subsidy from NZTA in that space. So even though the current government and the funding that wasn't made available through the current GPS, this is a 10-year plan. This will hold us in good stead if there are changes to that GPS and funding does become available. Then we're not running around trying to provide a network plan to do that. And it's a second iteration of the plan that we put together back in 2005 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, the Stride and Ride program. 2015, which enabled us to tap into, I think it was about $5.7 or $5.8 million worth of government subsidy funding to implement that plan. So an ongoing process, the new iteration of that, and ticks a lot of boxes in terms of strategic work, but also is a minimum requirement for the business case funding for NZTA. So you'll see, and it's the way that we pull it together and the way that we've developed it is in accordance with what we need to do for NZTA to get that, get it approved by them basically for future work. So, and on that, I'll leave it. Fraser would run through his bits and pieces.
Thank you, Sean. He's effectively summarised my presentation, so I'll take it a bit slower and we'll go through it in a bit more detail. So the purpose of today is really to seek climate environment's feedback on the plan, okay, and ultimately seek your recommendation to Strategy, Ops and Finance to accept the plan. So we followed a NZTA business case approach, as Sean mentioned, that ensures we're eligible for endorsement and subsequent funding, co-funding from NZTA. The funding of the delivery of the plan, although, is another question, and a challenge that I'll talk more to later on. This plan is an update of the former Strategic Network Plan, commonly called the Stride and Ride Program. It was effective from 2015 to 2025. So it's due for its update, and that's what this plan is. We reviewed the former plan and found approximately 90% of that program of works was completed. Very successful program. It was completed alongside the Expressway, NZTA's Expressways projects and revocation projects. So we saw a shared path go the length of the district, and the former plan enabled our community connect to that shared path through its east-west connections from our main town centres. This plan and update is pushing a bit further and building on that success of that former plan to get further connections to our schools and transport hubs and business centres. Early on in the development of the plan, we set up some key stakeholder workshops. That was to review the former plan's problem statements to see if they were still applicable as we move forward, and also test some criteria in the business case and adjust and seek some feedback. Philippa, I'll hand over to Philippa. She's just going to give a quick overview of that engagement process that we ran.
Thank you. We held a couple of workshops with key stakeholders way back in May and June last year. The first one, as Fraser said, we asked people to think about the problems and identify them on maps across the district where there were opportunities or problems. The second one, after the technical people had done some work and suggested projects, we had stakeholders test and rank the long list of projects. We had a workshop with internal staff and they really challenged the multi-criteria analysis, and that resulted in changes to the weighting of some of those aspects, which was really good. Once we had a draft program, we did a wider community engagement through our Have You Say platform, which was obviously promoted through all our channels. And then in August, we had a council briefing and a bit of a workshop. So we feel that the program that you're seeing today is a result of some robust engagement where everyone who wanted to has had a chance to have their say. So, is that okay? Cool.
Yeah, that's okay. So the funding for the delivery of this plan, that will come through the LTP process. So there's the acceptance of this plan, there's no funding attached to its approval, okay? That'll come at a later stage. It is a transport-focused plan. However, it has a lot of crossover with our economic development team and our parks team, particularly in the tourism and recreational tracks and trails space. As we promote our trails around the district, this plan helps enable connections to those recreational paths. At the moment, our recreational team are working on the Tracks and Trails Trust, which will focus on the recreational side of the network. So together, the transport and that recreational plan form, I guess, one network that we will continue to coordinate together. So the plan you would have seen in the attachment is a sizable document and business case. I've taken some key points just to highlight to you. It is effectively a 10-year program of improvement works, focusing on developing a safe, accessible and connected network which accommodates growth. The objectives we identified in it is to expand network coverage, as I mentioned, get into schools and some of those key areas that are missing, gaps. Safety, we want to ensure we continue to keep up with the changing standards in safety, making sure that they are safe and encouraging people to use the facilities we build. So the last objective there that we identified was ensuring that the investment is sustainable and done in an affordable way. So we scaled the program to $1 million per year. That's inclusive of NZTA subsidy for 10 years. That's a comparable investment to what we saw through the previous plan, the Stride and Ride program and revocation and expressway projects. So we'll get more into that as we go through the program. You'll start to see the larger long list and projects and costs. So if you could draw your attention to the program and the brochure that was handed out earlier, you'll see this is really the core document that we've summarised that people want to see, and this is something we want to release once we get acceptance of the plan to our wider audiences. If you look at the top left, you've got the rank of the projects. There's 24 of them, and as Sean mentioned, these are the high priority projects. You've got the towns that they're split across, a high level project description, so that's not the detail of what those facilities will look like. That'll come through the detailed design phase when funding gets approved. We did cost estimations of those high-level projects last year, so obviously those costs will change with time. We've got to make sure we keep reviewing them to make sure they are applicable and fit for purpose. Part of the business case requirements is we have to do a benefit cost to ensure that the investment is a positive investment. So you'll see, looking at that first example, the cost is $329,000, but the expected benefits is up closer to 1.2 million. Some of the benefits that are calculated in there are your safety and uptake. Thank you. So what we tried to do was, with the information we have at this time, is program these projects into that 10 years based on council and government's, I guess, current priorities. So you'll see the 3 LTP blocks and the blue, the projects that have a blue tick next to them. We've identified them as being a priority for council through the speed management plan. There's a lot of crossover between this plan and the speed management plan around connectivity and pedestrians and the speed of vehicles. So you'll see we've stacked them in the early part of the program so that we can get some efficiencies with this program of works, coordinating the 2 plans together. So that's not set in stone, that program and the projects and their priority. It's really through that LTP process that we will review it and put up those projects through that process, give council the opportunity to approve them and the public to give some feedback on. Down the bottom there, you'll see that the cost of those 24 projects around that 10 million, with a total expected benefits of around 40,000. Okay, so 4 to 1 return. Yeah, 40 million, 4 million, 4 million, yeah. In the Pathworks Network Plan, we actually have 94 projects listed, so it's a long list that we've categorised into high, medium and low. That total program of works was estimated at 94 million, with 140 million estimated in benefits to complete the full long list. So we had to scale that down into affordability, and we've scaled it down to 10 million over 10 years.
Okay, just quick, so that again gives you, so that you may see projects on there that you think that should be more of a priority, or it might be one that you want advanced. So, but we have to put it into some structure to get it through this process and NZTAs. But that's not to say that LTP, you might decide you want to put more investment into it faster. You might decide that you want to look at some of those priorities in the first 3 years, 5, 10 years. So it gives, by having this detail, gives you the ability to then look at reprioritising within that process. So that was a key one we felt, to give some flexibility. And again, if a developer comes along and it's in year 4 or year 7, we can leverage this plan to get them to advance it and bring it forward, and deliver those benefits early. And the benefits, again, there's a structure around how you define that dollar amount that is tied to the business case. So it's has to be robust enough to get it through NZTA in terms of that process. And so that's what we've used to come up with the dollars relative to that amount.
Thank you. So moving on to some challenges that this plan will face. So currently this LTP 24 to 27, there was no funding assistance from NZTA, and that is representative of the current GPS and funding environment for walking and cycling. It's possible that that funding environment could continue for some time and further push back this program and works. However, the good news is Council has funded our maintenance, renewal and some of our improvement projects, and you'll see that work underway on Riverbank Road in Otaki at the moment. We're building a shared path to connect Riverbank Road to the revocation shared path that's being built. That's been on the former LTPs and network plan, so it's good to see that get completed. Part of this process with engagement with NZTA, they've been involved in the process throughout. Some of their feedback to date has been really positive about the plan. Some of that feedback included that it is a well-structured business case and meets their requirements for a business case. They also mentioned that it's an appropriate financial case given the current financial environment or focus. There's no funding attached to it, so that makes it easier for them to endorse the plan at this stage. And they did say it was good to see the plan early, and that we're being organised to have projects ready to go, so that when funding is available, we can pick up its business case and apply for it straight away. Encouraging uptake is another challenge that we'll face. Obviously, it starts with building the facilities and improving them. If we don't keep up with making these facilities safe, it can deter people from using them. Uptake will also, work towards council's emissions reductions and climate goals as well. So we'll have less reliance on vehicles as our district grows. So it is a challenging space that we find ourselves in, given the funding isn't available to get on and build them. Currently, the network isn't future-proofed for population growth. As Sean mentioned, through that RMA process with developers, this plan will help inform developers of our network needs, and we can seek better outcomes through that mechanism for the community. So we need to continue to invest in our network. Next steps, a full report to Strategy, Ops and Finance Committee on the 15th of April. I think in the report it said the 10th, so it was just an error there. And that's obviously following your acceptance of the report. I'll continue to seek NZTA's endorsement. It'll help when we have council's acceptance of the plan. That brochure that we went through, we'll look to communicate that to our wider audiences and get feedback on that. And later this year, we'll start updating our activity management plan, which this plan effectively informs, and then we start going through that LTP process for funding for 2027, 2030. So discussion, feedback, comments. So open the floor. Please feel free to ask any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Fraser. Very, very interesting. So first of all, go on to Mr. Elson. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a few questions on the preferred program. Just the first one, just on the items related to Paparam Beach. Will any of these remove parking that's down on the beach at the moment? Because parking is such an issue down there at the moment. If we're going to put this in and remove parking, it's going to cause, more problems, especially on days like today where people ain't going to be, biking down there. And if you take the parking away and there's no parking already, what are they going to do? So I guess that's a question. I guess in all of these, but specifically Paparam, are we talking about removing existing parking places?
So we've identified these as high-level projects. How those facilities are built, we'll go through that, I guess, detailed design phase. We're not really identifying at this stage to look to remove any car parking, okay? That will be determined through that design and consultation process. A lot of them that are in there are actually already kind of on-road cycle lanes or off-road shared paths, so there shouldn't be too much impact on parkings. Yeah.
Okay. So if that's the case, how do we, if we haven't gone through the process of looking at, of the engineering of how these are going to be done, how can we cost estimate them?
It's a good question. We're purely looking them at at a high level, okay, identifying gaps and needs in the network, and then calling on other projects that have been delivered through this district or regionally, and their approximation of their costs that are associated with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same process we do for any high-level estimate. So we don't do detailed design. I mean, the LTPs are based on a whole lot of assumptions and estimates around what it might cost to deliver. Generally, you'll use a consultant that delivers and builds cycleways, or we know what cycleways cost to deliver on the ground in terms of contractors' rates. So you can pull together an estimate that at a high level might be plus or minus 25%. And that's the basis for the dollars in here. And again, they have to meet NZTA's criteria as to how you've come up with that estimate. And as Fraser said, we haven't done the detail in terms of design around parking. Some of them might have potentially have an impact on parking that, as part of that balance between providing more options as opposed to vehicles. And I guess that's the benefit of having 100 projects and the ability then to look at them as we get closer to delivery and make those judgment calls around impacts, consultation, costs, and there's certainly no shortage of projects to supplement those if the council decides that particular one is too controversial in terms of parking or doesn't provide enough benefits at the time. You can then look to reprioritise. So again, there's more than enough projects in the entire list to supplement some of those. And the other thing, just with parking too, it's an issue that we've been talked about in the transport area, the need to look at some sort of district-wide parking strategy. I know we talked about it a little bit with Paraparumu early on through the Te Urahi process, the need there, and that's certainly on the work program to have a look at as that becomes more and more of an issue. The development changes that we've seen come through in terms of now district planning and no requirement to provide for parking continues to create issues for us. So certainly we're looking at bringing something back and working on a project there that looks across the district around how we might manage some of those problems. Yeah, Paraparaumu Beach is a good example, but we've got other areas where it is an ongoing problem.
Okay. So if we, looking at this, part of this is to bring more, I guess, cyclists into the area instead of there. Do these projects include creating bicycle parking racks and stuff? Because of course, at the moment, that's a real shortage as well. And if we're bringing more people in, taking away car parking potentially, bringing more bikes in, there's already a lack of car parking, bike parking, secure bike parking places. Yeah. Without people parking on footpaths and creating an extra hazard.
Yes, it's not just cyclists the plan focus on, it's all users, so pedestrians, small wheels, mobility, it's everyone. But however, we need to closely monitor the demand and usage, so where we do have high areas of cyclist use, making sure that we do have the appropriate facilities for them to park at. So yes, that is part of this plan.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the expected benefits and how they're calculated. I'm looking at some of them, and some of them actually the benefits seem almost too good, And if I pick one of them, there's a couple there, but one in particular, if I look at, we've got one here, number 14 equal, so the second 14, the upgrading the existing crossing near Paraparaumu College, which has already been used as a dual pedestrian one anyway, because you've got bikes going over there and people all the time. So we're saying upgrading that at a cost of 300,000 will create almost 2 million in benefits, and that's quite hard to believe that, and it's just upgrading an existing crossing would, provide that type of benefit. Because, and the reason I'm asking this as well is if this gets released publicly with these expected benefits, then there's already some groups out there who are looking at all of these and other projects which are going on and questioning them. So, I'm a bit concerned, elected members, if they take these, then it will go out and all over social media will be, well, look at this, and, it will come back and affect everybody if we can't actually defend these. So what I'd say is, it would be almost need, on that case, that a breakdown of how these are going to be made up, these benefits, is actually provided as part of it to the elected members, because the questions will be raised and they need answers for it.
Yeah, so I would recommend you do dive into the detail in the business case. There is a lot of information supporting how those benefits are built that will help explain. And yes, that business case, I guess, is what we're using as a defendable position, right? So once it's endorsed and council accept it and NZTA accept it, it becomes our defendable document around those estimations. However, we need to continue to review them as we go.
So does the business case actually go down to each of these and say how each one of these was calculated? Mm-hmm. It does. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Mark might be able to add.
Yeah. Yes, so thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Fraser has shared a fantastic part of how that journey was done, but he didn't mention the journey with Stantec, professional consultants in cycleway, walkway development across New Zealand. They had some of their specialists, their best and brightest, working on this project. So when they're developing those estimates, developing those benefits, they're working to a standard framework with the tangible documentation to demonstrate how that was put together. Good work, Fraser.
Thank you, Mark. So I know there's a lot of lights here. I've just got one question, if I were going to jump in at this point in time. I'm just wondering, Philippa, if you could give us a general overview about who the key stakeholders are or were, because that obviously will flavour I suppose, these projects?
Yep, we worked with the Cycleways, Walkways and Bridle Group, advisory group. Yep, they were core. We also had at those meetings the principal of one of the colleges, representatives of the Youth Council, several elected members. Someone from our iwi partnerships team came along. We did invite iwi to meet us on this, but we didn't get any uptake on that from iwi, our iwi partners out there. But our iwi partnership team did engage with us. So is that everyone? Yeah, Older Persons Council. So we reached out through all those key stakeholders.
Thank you for that. I've got some questions later on, but I'll now pass on to Mr. Black, who's online. Thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, team, for that presentation. Some of my questions have been addressed, but the one that concerns me the most is that we don't actually have a plan to connect north of Otaki up to Levin, or take into account the new motorway going through. There's trains coming in 4 years. I've suggested on a number of occasions that we could have a bus just running right down the back strip of the motorway, and we could get all the buses and stuff just routing to the main pickup areas like the train station and stuff in lieu of those trains. But it seems like there's the biggest bang for buck will be private vehicles. And one, do we have the information? And two, are we ever going to address inter-region connectivity, which is probably a lot of emissions as well as convenience?
Yeah, sorry, Simon. So this is only really focused on, this is not public transport as such, but focused on alternative modes other than vehicles, but primarily cycling, walking, and I think Fraser mentioned scooters and mobility, accessibility, those sorts of things. Are you talking about a connection to the north? I mean,
yeah, well, I just don't see anything going north. I mean, it'd be great to have also a shared cycleway and pathways up north as well. But it just seems to be nothing going north of Otaki in our plans.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess we've sort of remained within the district and looking at connecting up to the existing shared path up in Otaki, that Riverbank Road, and then Rahui and around the back of Te Roto. But yeah, this work wasn't intended to look outside the district in terms of that connectivity, and certainly something we can take on board in terms of our conversations with O2NL. That project at the moment, I know there are some conversations going on about the shared path associated with that project and timing and some other bits and pieces. So that's absolutely something we're aware of and are feeding back through our engagement to NZTA on that project. But it isn't something that was part of the scope for this particular piece of work.
Great, that'd be great if you could include that. That'd be excellent.
Yep.
Other question is also around the expected benefits, and I did see there's quite a few costs out there. I was just wondering, over what period of time is the expected return on investment calculated on?
It's a good question, and it's one, I guess, quite challenging to measure those benefits. It's more around once those projects are completed, we look back at the network plan at its completion, and we start to review the calculations that were done at the start to kind of test and check those benefits that were done based on those costs. And you can see the actual cost of what those projects ended up being.
I think sorry, Simon, that's probably, because there will be, those benefits are linked to a formula that's got a whole lot of assumptions in there. And it's part of the process we have to go through in terms of the business case. Now, I expect, some of that stuff is a little bit subjective, and you will get people that challenge, what if you don't get as many people uptake on those shared paths, and what if this doesn't happen, or what if it costs a bit more to build it? So it is a little bit subjective in that sense in terms of the community's view on benefits, and people have a different view, absolutely, on certainly shared paths and cycleways generate a bit of attention around parking and other issues like that. So, I mean, we are required to do that. It is robust in that it passes the test with Stantec and with NZTA in terms of the funding and the business case model. Maybe there's a conversation there about how helpful it is in terms of the community's understanding of the projects, whether it opens the door to more challenges there. But we are required to provide it. So, and we can only respond, I guess, to the extent that that is the mechanism that we use. With anything, there are people that might have a different opinion on some of that stuff, and some of it's a little bit subjective, but that's basically what we've got. So
that's cool. It'd be really good to actually have a bit more then, if we can't, let's say, substantify it up front, it'd be really good to have some sort of structured monitoring downstream just to say, hey, look, this model's actually not right in these occasions because of whatever factor. And then we can actually start to refactor all the rest of the projects and see the real cost rather than, these substantive cost, or, subjective cost.
So we do have a program of the cycleway counters. We do have a monitoring network that allows us to pick up on those numbers in terms of uptake. So it'll be something we can feed back in there. Maybe we might need to expand a little bit more on that mechanism around the benefits within the report if it's not as clear as it could be. So we can have another look at that based on the feedback from today, which is useful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. So I now move on to Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. Thanks, Fraser, and the rest of the team. You noted that this was coming back to SOF in April, but I believe it's the 15th of May that it's coming to the table. Yep, so just so that everyone's aware, it's not coming to our meeting this Thursday, it's coming next month. I was wondering, acknowledging that this is looking at the network and the pathways within the network, but is there also an element which is being considered alongside that, which is how the network integrates with where you end up? So obviously the network is a means to get places, and if the network takes you to not a very accessible location whereby it's actually quite unsafe, then amazing, you've been safe along the journey, but how are we integrating our townships and the safety of them for pedestrians and cyclists with also trying to increase the safety of the network?
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, so we have the existing network that we've got well recorded and documented. This is the improvements, so they're the gaps. And then we've got our recreational component and our tourism component. So we're working closely with those teams to really link all that together, okay, and then and then communicate that through our channels so we can really promote this district.
I think it's a useful way of. So the question before about infrastructure to support the cycle racks and other bits and pieces, the link between this work and economic development's work in terms of the town centre strategy work would be useful. So again, you've got a great tool here to show you where that movement's happening and what that might look like in terms of expected numbers, because uptake is all based on a whole lot of those metrics. You can then feed those into the town centre destination planning to say, okay, in terms of SIPTED or in terms of your design, how you might integrate, say, the transport hub or the Raumati, you can expect to see another 1,500, just an example, a number of commuters or people moving to those destinations through this network. So therefore, you need to make sure you can accommodate them in a way that's safe and accessible. So it's a little bit chicken and egg. So this is a great tool to then feed into that. So we'll make sure that we're aligning up with the work that Chris is doing on those town centres, and also with the wider parks and open space. Again, if it's a destination as Waikanae Park, and we know that shared path or that is providing for this type of volume, then let's make sure that you've got a facility there that can accommodate that, and does that in a way that's safe for everyone as well. So
cool.
I think that's what we'd look to do,
Yeah, great. Just wanted to make sure that was being thought about, but sounds like it very much is. And in terms of yeah, obviously there were a bunch of stakeholders and interested parties involved in the creation and prioritisation of the shortlist and long list. Was part of that consideration also looking at like which parts of the district have been quite heavily invested in and had their infrastructure serviced and increased when it comes to CWB, sort of the network, versus maybe the communities that haven't, and also like where would be the biggest bang for buck? So for example, I mean, Paikakiriki, we've got the seawall project. There's some real potential opportunity to kind of, as Sean talked to, that tourism element to it as well, and the ability to both create a really functional network but also one that brings people to where they might be spending money. And so yeah, I'm just wondering about how that was also thought about.
Yeah, I don't.
And there's only one project from Paikakiriki in here, so I'm just kind of thinking like.
Yeah. It's purely on a needs basis. Those projects were identified through those investment objectives, and the community and public got their through those range of groups got their ability to give us feedback on where those projects need to be and what their needs are, and that fed into the multi-criteria analysis that determined the prioritisation of these projects. So we're not trying to evenly split them across the district. We're purely looking at it at a needs basis.
Yeah. Okay.
But that, in saying that, we're obviously aware. I mean, that probably is the LTP process.
Yeah.
We try not to be, well, here's 30% goes to Paikakiriki, 30%. It's needs risk for all of our work. But absolutely, there's an opportunity to have that sort of conversation through the long-term plan. And as we've got 100 projects, there's not a massive gap between the top 20 and the next 10. So there's still an ability to maybe have a look at that when we get through to the detail associated with the long-term plan. So I think that was the intention. And there is quite a good spread. Not that we deliberately tried to make sure everybody had at least a couple of projects in there.
And look, like I said, this isn't set in stone. It's a live document, so Paikakiriki community can give us feedback any point in time. And if there's things we've missed or further feedback, we welcome it.
Awesome, thank you. And just great work.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Kirby.
Questions first, Madam Chair, but I'm happy to ask my question. Just a quick question for me. What's the difference between a normal crossing and a dual pedestrian cycle crossing? Do we have any in the district? I think we've got down on Kapiti Road here, haven't we?
Yeah, so there's a range.
Practical usage seems to be, it's the same.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't seem to be any different. Both lights go on, whether it's a cyclist or a pedestrian. I don't know. Can you help the practical? What is the difference?
Yeah, there's a range of different crossing types. You've got your at-grade pedestrian crossing where vehicles give way to pedestrians. Okay, it's not raised. The raised crossings add the speed element to it, speed calming element to it. Dual crossings are cyclist and pedestrian facilities. So vehicles effectively are to give way to the cyclists as well. And that's typically raised, okay, as a speed calming. We have one down, the first one and only one on the district is down on Poplar Avenue, going into Queen Elizabeth. That's a dual raised crossing.
So these are not traffic light control. They're not controlled as such by the Kapiti Road. You've got the option for the bike on there. And there's a number of them in Wellington. If you look, there's an Island Bay. Island Bay has a couple where you've got that green cycle element that goes across at the same grade as the pedestrian or zebra crossing. And Poplar is basically that, is what you see there. That's the type of crossing we'd be talking about in terms of that dual.
So the practical difference is it's a raised platform.
And facility for cyclists, so they have priority. Yeah, they're separated.
They're wider.
They're wider. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
More expensive.
I'm just like, in practical terms, let's look at the one outside Paraparaumu College. That already happens, and we don't have to spend $300,000 on it.
Yeah, it's not just looking at that crossing. It's through the speed management plan that was identified as a speed calming area around schools and a priority. So this plan also looks at the integration with walking and cycling and how the two can work together. So it's not just, it's reviewing the existing one, is it fit for purpose? And it's also looking at the eastern end of Mazengarb at the other end of the school and looking at where that speed calming and crossing points would be. So the two work together in that respect. If there's some delivered through the speed management and we can coordinate the two and we receive funding in this plan, we will look at the wider picture of how our shared paths and walkways connect into them so that we've got that, I guess, efficient flow of pedestrians and cyclists getting in and out of school.
But it might be a bit subjective, in terms of uptake. I mean, if you're supposed to get off your bike and wheel it across a zebra crossing, in theory, I'm not sure who would even do that, but in theory, I think you're supposed to do that. But if you provide a wider platform, you have it clearly marked out, you provide a bit more comfort to users so that they can actually cycle. And again, it's a little bit subjective in terms of that assessment, but that's the theory sitting behind it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Just further to that, the college we've been engaging with them direct around these issues. We're actually meeting with the deputy next week as well, just to discuss their car park and further access. We recently did some work outside the college there of upgrading the shared path there, and that was coming back from feedback about the high demand that they have at those peak times. It is a key point for them that they want us to continue to look at safer crossings and access to the school.
I'm on the board, so
Oh,
I
nice.
have a specific interest in that area.
Perfect. Nice.
So I actually had to have a follow-up question into that because I know at one point, I think it was a long-term plan submission from Paparami College about putting a bridge over opposite the Jelly Miller. What happened to that? Would that have solved some of these issues?
Yeah,
Obviously, that never happened. And I don't think it's on the agenda anymore, is it?
We spent quite a bit of time reviewing that with the college. What we ended up coming up with and have completed is upgrading the share path on the western side of the stream. Okay, so we widened that, we sealed it, we put street lights in. That helped reduce pressure for the demand at that peak time when school kids are piling into that crossing with the amount of vehicles that are coming through. We also upgraded and provided a facility through the car park so that cyclists can go direct in and into their bike shed. We work closely with the college and they're pretty happy. They gave us good feedback that they're happy with the outcome of that.
Thank you very much. So we now go online to Mr. Moore. You're on mute.
Sorry,
Right.
there you go. You can hear me now.
Yes, thank you.
Some people prefer me on mute, probably. Look, the shared path that's occurring along Riverbank Road in Otaki, I just thought I'd raise this, and this may be something that Sean can give me direction on, for the access, the 4.5 kilometre access from the pathway at the old State Highway 1 that goes from, in fact, it'd be about a bit more than 4.5. It crosses where the Te Horo kilns are, and there's no pathway along the Te Horo Beach Road into that village community. It's a very narrow road. It's probably something for an LTP, I suspect, but some direction and conversation around that in the future would be helpful.
So are you talking about the Te Horo Beach Road and why that doesn't have a shared
Correct,
path?
correct, yeah.
Right.
I know it's not on the radar, but I just thought I'd raise it in this forum since discussion around this subject. Yeah.
I think that would be a good submission into the next long-term plan. I mean, obviously, there's I don't know what the length of that would be, but Peka Peka.
4.5 kilometres.
Yeah, so it isn't currently in the program. There's some work we've got proposed there in terms of flood risk, but
That's right.
I know that Peka Peka has come up over the years as being a priority in terms of shared path or extra width, basically, for cyclists. But I don't think Te Horo is in the current plan.
We did get good feedback from the community on the plan around Te Horo Beach and Peka Peka. typically it was from on-road cyclists was the main use of those roads. It is our coastal cycle route. So the feedback was more around how do we make them feel safer using those roads on road when they're in groups. So that we've identified that in the plan around that coastal cycle route, around signage and markings and how we can accommodate those on-road cyclists. A shared path facility or footpath, I guess that is possibly further down the line as the district grows and Tohoro Beach grows as a community. That would be a significant investment at this stage. It hasn't been identified as a specific project in the plan at this stage.
Right. I'm meeting with Janice Hill and Fergus Brown later this week from the Trails Trust to have a wider discussion on this subject. But that's helpful. Thanks for that direction, Sean.
Yeah, I think a more affordable solution is some sort of off-road. I think it would be that would be a significant cost to provide anything more than that, and based on affordability, I'd be surprised if something of that scale would get above a lot of the other. I mean, you've got 100 projects just here that have a link to benefit, but yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. So now I'll move on to Mr. Judge.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to hear. Thanks for the presentation and the work. On the benefits, you sort of pointed out that you'd spoken specifically to the parks and business teams and then made one mention of climate. Is there any quantification of the emissions avoided through induced mode shift through having these things? And if so, will that be included at the Treasury social cost of carbon as a benefit?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think I can answer that question.
Does that mean that at the moment climate benefits are not included?
Yeah, so I think it's probably best to refer back into the full plan around how these projects were, I guess, categorised, and through that multi-criteria analysis, there's investment objectives. Environment and climate is part of that. And I think that's where I don't know the exact weightings or contribution climate has.
Because I've had a quick look through and
right,
I might have just missed it, so
right.
I don't want to say it's not there when it may
Yeah,
well be.
I think you probably know the answer. I don't believe it is that explicit in terms of that specific reference to the dollars in terms of the assessment that's here. But we'd have another look and see what is actually in there. But as we mentioned before, that benefit stuff can be a little bit subjective and
I would hope that
challenge.
There's another opportunity, of course, to do this joined up sort of work through the next proposal we're going to look at on the agenda today of the mitigation. So it's always good when the climate team are involved there. On these, and then sort of getting back to Paekakariki, will the seawall afford this sort of quality of pathway in Paekakariki along the seawall? Because you would then have a grade separated cycleway as well.
No, that's not currently part of the budget.
Can that just be looked at even briefly, that we could have?
We have looked at it multiple times. It's come back through council, a number of LTP iterations. There was proposed at the moment a widening of the footpath on the parade, but not that. That's a photograph, I think, of the Esplanade, which is the lower or Raumati South as it extends. So it's not that extensive in terms of it's a 2.5 metre wide shared path.
Right. So this passes some sort of cost benefit analysis to have this grade in one part of the district, but not in Paekakariki.
That was built in 2008, 9, 10, I think, in terms of that particular short section there. So again,
we just don't do that anymore then.
If we're talking about the Paikokariki seawall,
Yeah.
then that, I guess, is already a project that's funded, has been consulted on through the long-term plan. It's not currently part of this paper today, and it is not provided with whatever that width is there, that type of facility. No, it's got a shared path that sits up at grade on the parade, which is, I think, 2.5 metres wide.
So it's just the regular footpath.
No, a wider regular footpath is about 1.5 metres.
Okay.
1.6, I think, is the new, or even 1.7 is the new.
But
1.8, yeah, so it's wider than it's a shared path.
would the surface treatment of that allow for you to run down there with your buggy?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
concrete. It'll be
Okay.
concrete.
Oh, well,
Yeah. It's not as
that-
wide as that's. Probably a little bit more than 2.5 metres wide.
Well, it's yes then.
Well,
No, it's not yes, because then the expectation is that we provide footpathing, and that's not part of the project. So it might be as a secondary component of that it can be used as, but that's not its primary use.
So there
So
is
it's
an
no.
adjacent parallel 2.5 metre footpath that's going in.
yeah, again,
So-
the project, we've said that we would look to accommodate a widening of well, there is no path on that, a concrete shared path running on the western side of the parade that connects across from the north to the south, yes. In terms of timing, again, that's a 7-year program in terms of the current delivery of that project. So I'm happy to give you some more details about what exactly it is that's provided as part of that. But again, it's not part of today's paper. It's not in this network plan. But again, I'm more than happy to provide exactly what it is.
I mean, if there can be a note, perhaps to the community board to cover that. Just to clarify that would be great.
100% we can do that, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr Judge. So I suppose if I can just make some comments, it's my understanding that that seawall is to protect council infrastructure. It's not actually for, to protect people's houses or for cycleways. So is that a fair?
Yeah, it's a replacement of the existing seawall, which is there to protect the parade and the, I guess, water supply down there in terms of infrastructure. But that's the primary focus of it, yes.
Yeah.
But again, over the years, we have talked about is there ability to actually look at improving the footpath or improving a pathway along there. And as I've said, I'm more than happy to provide you with the detail around what that might look like as part of that project, and we can make sure it gets raised with the board at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr Millen. So Shelley, Councillor Warwick.
My comment is, I know you're constrained by what NZTA gives you to work with, but I couldn't find, it's quite a big document where there's actual specific links to the Trails Trust or the Greater Network, and maybe it should be more highlighted, because otherwise it's up to interpretation, the links between other active modes. I know in here you've put example cycling, pedestrians and cyclists, and put all mode users, which is great, but I don't know whether it just needs to be more definite that there's a real connection, that people, because people don't just live in these urban areas in Paraparaumu Beach, they might be coming from the hills, which is the CWB network, and just having that real solid reference to the link would not leave it to interpretation, which is a big problem for the other active modes when they get left out of projects, even into the future. That's why we're left out of lots of council projects, because of what NZTA's specifications are. But as a council, if we clarify that more, it isn't left to, look, Sean might go and get a CE job at some water place and he's gone or whatever, and the interpretation is then to the person who comes in if it's not clearly documented in this plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But I guess one of the issues would be, I think it's probably will be more useful for the trust around the tracks and trails to leverage their connections to this network as opposed to then potentially having NZTA looking at this as being an explicit connection to a recreational track and saying, oh, well, maybe that doesn't quite meet the criteria in terms of funding. So
And yeah,
it's a sort of...
I know.
you don't
I
wanna-
understand your dilemma fully, but in a really passive way, how do we, you know, like without it jumping out to be the main feature, how do we passively kind of integrate it in so that somewhere in there in the future there is, you know, it can't be, well, interpreted in a different way.
You can't
'Cause-
connect to that because it's not part of the...
Yeah, and I know that we've got a lot of real amazing staff support for including horse rider connection as well. Obviously, we don't particularly want to be right in the centre of town, but I don't know if we can passively kind of word it.
I think that's a challenge for us to now take up with the
Because we don't want to jeopardise
Brendan's
funding.
group. Yeah.
Because this
But make
funding
sure
is
it
not
works.
specifically, like these projects are not specifically in the areas that horse riders want to
No.
be, but they, you know, it is part of the wider network. So just really passively making sure that we're embedded in there somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how we can make that work. I mean, the other thing with this is great, because NZTA have said there's no funding, but in NZTA, I mean, we've just recently, just this week, I think, with regard to the speed management process, I think when we briefed council and there was no funding provided for that work that we were wanting to do there, and we provided an alternative mechanism to try and get the speed management plan endorsed, and the mayor wrote a letter to NZTA. So that just came back on Thursday or Friday, I think, with NZTA endorsing that approach. So they've signed off on the plan based on that mechanism rather than the one that they were suggesting, which was a lot more complicated and expensive, which is great. But they've also, at the same time, provided us with the funding component of those projects. So we had $1.8 million that council agreed they would use our share to fund all of that work. And NZTA, as they often do, and we've done quite well at making the most of these opportunities, they will say there's no funding, but then, lo and behold, through the year, they will interject and add a round of funding on the basis of, I guess it's possibly councils that aren't spending their money. So we've just been given $900,000 worth of funding to supplement the council share for that $1.8 million, which is great. So this document helps us, even though we're talking about another 3 years. Wouldn't be surprised if closer to the election potentially there might be some more funding injected into this shared space as well. So it's a great tool for us to have to tap into that money as and when it becomes available. So, but sorry, your question, Shelley. Yes, we will absolutely make sure that we try and provide those. Yeah.
Just further to that, yeah, great feedback. Thanks, Shelley. I think that's a good challenge for us, for the two of us actually, to take that back through the CWB advisory group and put it to the group to see how we can integrate and solve that problem or challenge, because they are in the middle of the Tracks and Trails advisory group and obviously the Pathway Network plan. So thank you, that's good.
Councillor Halliday.
Very quickly, through you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to flag number 14, Rimu Road crossing points. I know the Older Persons Council put in a couple of times asking for crossings around there. I'd just like to flag. I'd like to get a bit more of an understanding about that, but potentially have that looked at being brought forward as such.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
I see that Mr. Black has another question, but I actually have a couple of questions that I want to raise, or comments anyway. So the first one, it's already been mentioned, is Peka Peka Road. So Peka Peka Road having some type of path along there for cyclists has been on the agenda for a very, very long time. So I have to say I'm really surprised not to see it here, and I suppose that's why I asked who the key stakeholders were, but because looking at that group, to me, there wasn't actually any one or group that would have been, particularly looking at this area. So, to me, earlier on you talked about deterring people from using various routes. To me, this is actually, it's actually very, very dangerous. One of these days, someone's going to die. And with, I suppose, you've got the expressway, cycleway, you have got a lot more people using that, and there's development going on along that road, and there's more planned as well. So it's actually going to, and this is a 10-year project. So this is something that, and it's about connecting up. It talks about, Patara Road and Rutherford Drive. A few years ago, they were actually upgraded from what I could see, there wasn't actually much wrong with it. Whereas to me, it's about extending some of that safety. So interesting. And I've read the report. It does talk about issues in there, but I can't see it on here. And I know it's a big project and it costs a lot of money, but that shouldn't necessarily be a deterrent.
So yeah, you're right. Pika Pika Road is narrowed. There is a conflict between vehicles and on-road cyclists as a result of that. What we did get feedback through those workshops and the wider public have your say from those on-road cyclists. The CWB advisory group have on-road cyclist representatives, and they also gave feedback into it. Yeah, and reiterating the importance or need for that safety improvement needed there. We categorised that because it's not just Pika Pika Road; it is on that coastal cycle route. Okay, so we included it in the list. One for the Kapiti Coast coastal cycle route. Okay, so that's looking at specifically those on-road cyclists. Pika Pika Road, Pukinamu, Tohoru Beach Road, those are those key routes that on-road cyclists like to use. So we did group that in there and we'd look at it as a larger project. There's also opportunity for us through other mechanisms to look at Pika Pika Road through road rehabilitations and renewals and widening work through our standard maintenance operation and renewals program. So it is definitely on our list as a project that we need to.
Because I suppose the difference between the likes of Tohoru Beach Road and Pika Pika Road is that you get to the end of Paitara Road and then there's nothing. You get to the end of the expressway. If you want to go down Pika Pika Road, there's nothing. So it's actually, there is a massive gap there.
That's right. And there's also actually plenty of, and we're anticipating a lot of development in that area as well. So there is an opportunity for us to look at the wider picture and connectivity to those developments. Yeah, I think we just have to keep an eye on those changes as they come about.
But it is on the list. It's just not on the list, the top 20.
Yeah.
So it's in the wider program. It's in the report in terms of that 100. So through the LTP again, this has tried to look at affordability, that measure of $1 million. It may be that through another mechanism it gets escalated up through that process in terms of delivery. Mark might have something to add in terms of probably that renewal.
It didn't come into this plan because it was already meant to get built. It's in our AMP. It's meant to be in this 3-year plan, but because NZTA didn't fund us, we didn't have the money for it. So it's in that. It's not forgotten about. It's in our plan. It ends up being in the top of this new list for the next LTP because it didn't get funded when it was meant to be done this time round, and that funding had to get consolidated to get Riverbank Road over the line. So absolutely agree. It's needed. Finding a mechanism as soon as we can.
So then if it's not included in this long-term plan, because this actually does talk about long-term plan cycles, it's not included. So I don't actually understand that because I know it's been talked about for years and years.
It's just it's an anomaly. It's in our AMP this time round. It's meant to be being built now.
I know, but it's not.
But it's
That's
not.
The key
so
question.
We need to resolve that, and it gets pushed by default into the next LTP period until we can get funding for it with these projects.
So saying that then, on this table here, you've got expected delivery date and it's got long-term plan cycle. And so it goes out to 36. So from what you're saying, it should actually be included on this list, but it's not.
What we didn't put onto this plan was the stuff in the 2024-27 period. So this plan kicks in from what this AMP does into our longer journey.
So then are you saying it is going to be built in the next 3 years?
When funding allows, and at the moment NZTA pulled their funding, and we've had to reprioritise the funding we've got, so it has not got funding at this time.
So what we're saying though is if we can find funding, this LTP will deliver it. If we can't find funding for it in this LTP, it'll go to the top of the list of the next LTP, which would be part of the process to lock that in.
Thank you, Sean. You said exactly what I was trying to get to.
Okay, so saying that then, that actually raises a really interesting question. So there's probably other projects which are above this list here that we haven't really talked about today.
Well, there's the current...
It would have been just good to have that
there
oversight.
There were 3 significant projects on our AMP. Riverbank Road, which we've been able to achieve. Well done, Fraser, for that one. The Paitawa Pekapeka route, and the stretching Waikanai Beach to Waikanai Township. There's a stretch in there that hasn't been done, probably down Park Road, and that's also sitting in no man's land at the moment.
Okay, thank you, and I know why that's probably sitting in no man's land, but anyway, that's another conversation.
Funding is the reason it's sitting in no man's land. We do not have funding for that project.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's really, I'm really pleased I asked that question. So the other questions I've got, so I see that Waikanai does feature here quite a lot, which is great, but I do have to, I have some questions. Particularly for the section down towards the beach. So you've got 12, and you also have 8, and then you have 9. The 9 that project there is not actually going to occur until 2033, and I'm just wondering how that's going to connect those other 2 bits up if it's not done earlier.
It's a good question. Look, these are not set in stone, those forecasts, okay? What we want to do is group projects to be as efficient as we can, and that's based on councils and the government's priorities at the time. So this coming LTP 27 to 2030, we'll use this plan, okay, and we will look at the high priority projects, what's happening in the area, and we'll look at regrouping these and reprioritising, and we'll come back to the community and council to get feedback on through that mechanism.
So thank you for that. Fraser, I'm just wondering, like for example, is there any particular reason why those 3, they all join up, they're not actually linked together? Or is it about timing? Because well, I don't know, because the timing is the same for 2 of them, but one's way out.
Again, we had to start with some structure around deliverability, and that $1 million a year threshold was what we started with, what we've used.
Yep.
So then to fit everything within that, we've had to move things around in terms of timing. But again, this is, as Fraser said, I mean, we'll lock in a workshop now, if you like, in advance of the 27 LTP to go through the top 24 projects, look at timing, cost, deliverability, affordability and funding as part of that process. And through that, you might see the timing change, and it might go to 1.5 million or 2 million a year. Again, it's also trying to fit them within council's debt ceiling. So we've got a $75 million.
Yep.
So it's quite a complex mechanism to finally lock them into the long-term plan. And to do that now, we didn't believe this is the most appropriate way to do that, because this is really a strategic document in terms of the network. It's got some flexibility around timing. It's got some funding opportunities there. It has to be done this way to allow us to get the business case over the line, but then it plugs into the council process around prioritisation, affordability, delivery and consultation as well. So
Yep,
you
okay.
would lock it in through that, I expect.
Okay, so yeah, but just, you know, you're obviously noting how that's, you know, you've got those three sections, and the middle bit is actually somewhat delayed, but no doubt you'll take that on board, so thank you for that. So now we'll move on to last question, Mr. Black, or comments. Mr. Black, thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one final question, comment, observation from me. With building all these new roads comes downstream costs. I'm not sure there's a lot of information in the business case that regards to what is our future infrastructure investment for maintenance going to be looking like.
Yeah, so as we build these projects and the network grows, yeah, so does our maintenance and renewal budgets that go with it. We've got a good idea of the costs associated with that through our asset management. So yes, the more we build, the higher our operational costs and renewals in the space will be. So now's possibly a challenging time to be building stuff when the funding isn't coming that supports the maintenance and the renewal of these assets. So it's one we just have to continue to adjust as we go through that LTP process and get funding online.
Right, is that reduced off the benefit return on investments as well?
I think I'll be surprised if that goes down to that level of complexity. But yeah, it is again, we're talking about $1 million worth of delivery a year, which is not a huge amount of on the ground assets. But yes, it does increase our operational cost, and you would hope a lot of the stuff, again, if you're building a brand new concrete path, or if it's a new asset, then you're not straight away into a whole lot of maintenance costs. But
yep.
it is a good point to raise. Yes, as our network gets bigger, whether it's roads, paths, whatever, it delivers a maintenance increase there, but it also then potentially is offset by growth in terms of use and growth in terms of the district. So, and that, I guess, comes back to that balance between deliverability, cost, debt, and ongoing maintenance that we have to challenge. It was challenging for all of the work we do, and as part of the LTP conversation. But and it's also a bit because you don't get the increased operational costs from NZTA unless you've got the business case to show that you're going to deliver the extra network. So it's sort of circular, and it's supporting that increased subsidy from NZTA as well in terms of that 51%. But it's a good point to note that these extra assets do incur extra OPEX.
It'd be good just to have some more commenting around that, just to make sure that, everyone's aware that you've actually thought about that, and also just talk about that cycle a bit more. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, great. We shall note that.
Lovely. Thank you. That's my only question. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Black. So now if we look at the recommendation on page 23, that we accept this plan. So what I'm going to do is actually allow any very quick comments about the conversation we've had over the last hour about anything that we'd like to raise at this point in terms of this recommendation.
Just noting that this committee is not accepting the plan. We're recommending to SOF that it's accepted. So there will also be another opportunity to provide any comment there.
But it's a case of where there's some people sitting around the table here who are not at that meeting.
Yeah, no, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, correct. Okay, thank you. Right, so then we will move on to the recommendation that the Climate and Environment Committee recommend to Ops that we accept this plan. Can we have a mover for that? Oh, Councillor Holbrook, the Mayor, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Warwick. All those in favour?
So, right of introduction, please.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to congratulate the staff on this piece of work, a great piece of engagement that was done with feedback from a lot of stakeholders. I did notice in the list that Aotearoa's a little bit far down, but I note that there's current work going on, and noting the comments around Peka Peka that this isn't an exhaustive list of everything that's happening. It's the plan from 2027 onwards, and I think it's important to note that. And I think it's also important to note the comments from staff that this isn't set in concrete. It's it's dependent on funding and conversations through the next long-term plan. So I feel really comfortable progressing this piece of work today. I think it's the best it can be at the current point in time, especially with the consultation that's happened, and thanks to Philippa for the work that's gone into that. So I'm very happy to move this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Councillor Warwick is recorded as seconding that. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The recommendation is passed. Thank you, and thank you very much to the staff. Massive piece of work in terms of looking at our overall district and sorting out the priorities with so many balls in the air. Thank you, and for that work, for bringing this to us. And obviously, it's a moving conversation, literally. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Yes. So yes. So we've got a number of more items to discuss today. But I think we do need a break. So we have a 10-minute break. Thank you.